Like to call the January 12th, 2023 Plaquemines Parish Council Special Meeting order at 8:59 a.m. Machines are open for roll call. Let the record show 8 members are present. Dr. Gouy is absent. We stand and have the Reverend say the prayer.
Oh, gracious and eternal God, we thank you for another day up on the land of living. God, as we come together for this special occasion, God, we pray that all of us have the peace of mind, that God, and all of us do that which is right. So you guide our thought, guide our action, God, and everything we've done, we've been unity to make the register of voter the best registered voter in the state of Louisiana. It is in Jesus' awesome name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank y'all for coming this morning. We're going to have each candidate for the job come up, tell us a little about themselves, and then we'll be able to ask them questions. Anybody have any questions before we start?
Item 2, new business. 2A, interview of applicants for the Register of Voters position. 1, Deborah Rhodes.
Ma, you could come sit up at the table right there.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Deborah Stump Rhodes. I'm from Venice. My mother was a Kaludovich, and my dad owned Stump's IGA for over 40 years. If you ever walked into my dad's store, he would meet you with a smile and was very friendly to everyone. I take after my dad because I love to help the people in the parish. My ex-husband got a job at the Alliance Refinery, and I have lived in Belchase ever since. Through the years, I've had a couple office jobs, and 13 years ago, I was hired and trained by Register of Voters Mary Buras. I have worked for Register of Voters Kathleen Kettner, and also worked for Register of Voters Sharon Brannon. I've had 13 years of training from the state on the rules and laws of the voting process. Before the last 2 elections, the chief deputy was terminated, and the Register of Voters resigned. The state was going to send someone to help me. They knew me, and they knew I had been in charge of previous elections, and they had confidence in me and knew I could carry out the elections with no problems. After the 2 elections, I received the highest recommendation that I could ever receive. I received a text from Nick Myers, the election operator. Nick is our go-to guy with the state. When our office has to deal with the state, 90% of the time it's with Nick Myers. If the council appoints me to be Register of Voters of Plaquemines Parish, I will appoint Colleen Bartholomew as Chief Deputy and Joan Jim Coley as confidential assistants. Both are highly skilled at their jobs and have a lot of experience with the voting process and state voting laws of Louisiana. I will work closer and better with the Clerk of Court, Kim Trulich Vaughan, and her staff than ever before. I am currently active on the Plaquemines Parish Board of Election Supervisors. Even though I will work for the state, my main goal is to work for the people of Plaquemines Parish. And I will make sure that the elections are run honestly and fairly, and my office will treat every voter with respect and kindness. I have no political gain and will make sure the elections and the Register of Voters office is run by the laws and rules of the state of Louisiana. Due to the recent events at the Register of Voters office, I plan to work hard to restore the confidence and integrity of the election process for the voters. I pledge that I will work my best to communicate with the administration and council members and welcome any comments you may have. Early voting has grown and has become a very popular way to vote. I know Register of Voters in Plaquemines Parish is a very important job, and I am by far the most qualified and will do the best job for the voters. I know you will take my experience and years of service in account and appoint me to be the next Register of Voters. Thank you for your time and look forward to serving you and the people of Plaquemines Parish. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody has a question, just push you. Mr. Newsom?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rhodes, I went fast.
Oh,
Your
I know.
appointments.
I take my glasses off.
Your appointments, what were the names again? I missed that. That you-
Colleen Bartholomew, she has worked part-time for many years. And Joan Jimcoli has worked as a commissioner, started with Dot London and worked under Kim Turlich.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yes.
Press you request to speak?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Ms. McCarty?
Hi, how you doing?
Is the mic on?
Yeah, okay. So you said that you have 13 years, and according to Mr. Newsom's question, it was with the people that you just mentioned?
No, I worked, Mary Beers hired me. She was register at the time. And then when she retired, I was moved up to confidential assistance under Kathleen Kettner, and upstate confidential assistance through them. But with Colleen Bartholomew has worked for voters, I want to say 10 years. She's just worked part-time, though. She started out as a commissioner. Now, Joan has worked for, like I say, Dot London with the computers. She worked for early voting and worked election day with Kim. But I feel that Joan was is very qualified because Joan worked in Belchase on our computer system. So she knows the Erin system. And when I brought her in, when Sharon resigned, it was just the two of us. It was part-time worker Colleen Bartholomew and me. And I knew she had good judgment, and I knew she was loyal. So that's why I brought her in as part-time, and just working with her through this election, I see she's very good.
Okay. How many years of supervisory experience do you have, and in what capacity? It doesn't have to be here, it could be any time in your life.
Right. I worked for Corpro, and you have my resume. I was administrative assistant over the office,
And how many people did you supervise?
about 5.
Okay.
And then when I started at HBH, I started from the bottom. And I went up to accounts payable, accounts receivable, and then I would take over. Or we did a lot of cross-training at HBH. And when something wasn't there, I would take over.
Okay, and how many people at HBH?
Oh, there was about 6 women.
6 women, okay. In any of your positions, recently or in the past, what type of responsibility have you had for budgets or accounts, et cetera?
My past, I've had accounts receivable and accounts payable. Here with registered voters, the register was in charge of the budget. But I am more than welcome to learn it. If I get registered, it won't take me much time because I'm a quick learner. And I had already printed out the budget from last year. I have it. And our budget's small compared to the other offices. Ours is only 147. So it won't take me much time after I get with the finance department. They could show me exactly what they did and how I do it. But learning from the years, I know we have a very small budget next to, so we have to be very careful what we spend.
Okay. And in the past, the companies that you've worked with, what would you say the budgets were that you managed?
Well, Stubbs IGA, I handled $200,000 cash that I was responsible for, had to be put in the safe at night. I had to just give it out to the courtesy booth and get the receipts back. And at HBH, it was I was responsible for collecting the receivables.
Okay.
So I would have to make the
That's
deposits.
a daily budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Ever have any issues with that in your office?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Have you ever been an entrepreneur?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Champagne?
Ms. Rhodes, first of all, thank you for applying for this position. I'd like to ask you, with anyone who applies for a new position has an idea what they would like to do to change it or improve upon it. Could you expand upon that, please?
How to improve? I've already started last week. I got with the two ladies that were there, and we sat at the round table and we was going over the election code Title 18, letting them know the laws. And I told them every week we will get together at the round table and talk about how the week was, what we're going to accomplish next week, how we can improve. And none of this going outside of the office and talking about the office. You stay within. So that's how I feel it's going to improve.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Ms. Rhodes, you say that in your statement, you want to restore the confidence of the register of voters. Can you tell me why you made that statement?
I said that because of, I think what went on the last 2 years, a lot of people have lost confidence in us. And I noticed it in this last election. I kept watching the numbers every day, and I just was kind of like disappointed people weren't coming out. I get excited when people come out and do their vote. So I want to try and, if there's any questions, they're welcome to come in the office. Any question, if y'all ever have questions, we're open to, to answer anything. I just feel what went on the last 2 years kind of gave people, I don't care. And I do care.
One last question. So there was two people before you, and I didn't understand. Can you tell me what happened? You say you got in your position, and I didn't understand what happened to the two people and what their title was and what happened.
Well, first, Sharon terminated the chief deputy. And she wanted me to move up to chief deputy, and I said, no, I'm going to stay like I am right now. I'm still doing the job, but just leave me where I am. And then during the election, I said, I'm working the job, why not? So she appointed me chief deputy. Well, little did I know, I'm running the election, I'm in Belchase and stuff, and the early voting had stopped, and she came in the office, she said, I am sending my resignation in Sunday, I'm resigning. And I went, okay. And I'll tell you, before she walked out the office, the state called me and said, Debbie, you are a register of voters right now. You take the keys and you run the office from here on. But I know they've known me for 13 years, and they knew I could do it. A matter of fact, before Sharon was hired on, something that came up, and it was just part-time worker, Colleen Bartholomew, and me, and we sent out ballots. We ran the election. Totals were perfect, and I was just with the two of us before Sharon came in. When Sharon came in, she took, because she had to go through a process of being sworn in. She was picked, appointed, but she couldn't do the role until she was sworn in.
And I know I said this is my last question, but Councilwoman Pat asked you some questions. So how much of finance is a part of the work of the registered voter? I mean, y'all do a lot of finance in the registered voter?
No, only once a year we have the budget,
Okay.
and we look over it, and like I say, they have it set where we can spend. So it's our responsibility during the year to watch the money that we spend. Because if we spend too much, oh, well, that's bad on us.
Thank you very much.
Ms. McCarty?
I should have explained earlier that I took the time to call the references of the people who are running for office. And I asked them a series of questions. And so my questioning to you was trying to gather, and to them to gather information about a person's character and ability to handle responsibility. So I wasn't necessarily thinking that she had to handle a lot of money right now, but I was going through the business process of how do you go about managing money? Has there ever been a problem with managing money in the past? And that's a very sensitive topic within any business. That's why I asked that line of questioning. So I would like to ask you, how would people describe your character?
Trustworthy, honest, friendly, and always wanting to go the extra step. I'm telling you, if we mailed out a ballot, a mail ballot, and it didn't have the right information, I would try so hard to get with that person so their vote would count. Matter of fact, the last election, I had to go to someone's house. I called them up. They didn't have a witness. I just like going the extra step. To me, that's very important.
And how would you describe your temper if, temperament is what I meant to say. If a very strong-minded person were to come in and be demanding? How would you
Demanding
handle
like mean demanding, or just wanting you to do your work?
do something immediately and maybe they were nice, maybe they weren't so nice? How would you handle that situation?
I have a very good temperament. I'm not going to be hollering at anyone. I think that's unnecessary. We will sit down and talk. And just like I told the two ladies that work with me right now, if you find anything with me, please sit down with me and tell me, and we can work this out. Because nobody's perfect. They're not. And like I said, if they see something that they don't really think is right, please tell me, and we're going to talk about it and go from there.
Okay. And I understand from speaking with other people that your position, there is no set guideline. You basically walk in and have to learn the job. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but as people come in, we train. The things that I have known, I've trained the last staff. We just automatically. For years, I've been training Colleen Bartholomew. She was part-time. Even to this day, she's going to have, if she's confidential assistant, she will work for the state. Chief deputy. And I told her she will sit a chair by me and she will learn the payroll.
Okay.
We're going to have cross-training all the way.
Okay.
Because you never know when something comes up. And it's so nice that I had been there that long that I knew what was going on. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming, Ms. Rose. and-
You're more than welcome, and thank you for taking time out for me.
Item 2A2, Leanne Jenkins.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Lots of new faces, good thing. My name is Leanne Jenkins. I live in Port Sulphur, been there since 2003, been in the
You're
parish.
talking to Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. Once again, I live in Port Sulphur. I've lived there since 2003. Been in the parish since I was about 18, so we're going to just leave it at 18 and not tell you how many years that actually is. I was hired by Mary Burris right after Katrina to help out with restructuring the office because it was a mess. I worked under her for 7 years, and then she retired, and then Kathleen Kettner was appointed the registrar at that time. Let's see, let me get to this now. This is easier. I want to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to let me speak on why I would be the best candidate for the registrar's position. I had worked in the office for 14 years, 7 years as the confidential assistant, and another 7 years as chief deputy. In those years, I put in countless hours that included data entry, filing, daily reports, mailing, budget, payroll, and mailing and receiving of mail ballots, in-person voting of the seniors at the Riverbend Nursing Home, conducting early voting, purchase orders, and the list goes on. At this time, I also attended many training sessions in the yearly conventions where I made lots of contacts with other employees of the various ROV offices, and that's how you actually learn things. When you go to convention, it's amazing how much that you find out that you didn't know what was supposed to actually happen. As for the office, there are a few changes I will implement if hired. First, the parish vehicle will be kept at the home office in Port Sulphur. It will no longer be used for going to and from work. This will save the parish a few $1,000s in fuel and maintenance per year. Secondly, the office locks, as I know them to be, will be changed. In the past, the custodian had keys to the office. The only people that will have keys to the office will be office employees so as to keep the records private and safe. I plan on checking with other registrars in other parishes on what we can do to improve efficiency in the office and what things may not be getting done that we may be missed. I will try again to get a second office up and running in Belle Chase. This is where the majority of our voters are, and it would be nice for them to have an office close by and not to have to drive to Port Sulphur, since some things have to be done in person. I will also not be drawing a retirement, which will save the parish money since they do not have to contribute to it. There will also be more public interaction, be that on social media, helping the schools out with their elections, which a lot of them don't know. When they have elections, we can get the state to bring the early voting machines to their school, programmed with their different things that they need, and they can use the machines to actually vote, which also helps them get more comfortable for in the future when they have to come and vote. Let's see. In 2010, this was a big thing I know recently, I was in charge of and completed on my own the redistricting. It went flawlessly. There was not a mistake to be had. I also know that as registrar, your place is to simply input the data the demographer supplies you with. That is it. It is not to question where the ward precinct lines are placed. As for myself, there has not been a week that goes by that I don't feel like I should be in the office. This is especially heightened when an election is going on. I know that I can do the job very well and efficiently. The last election I ran was the largest in the parish's history. There were no problems and it went very smooth. I basically ran the office for my last year because I had a boss that was rarely there. I know what that is like, and I promise to be in the office during working hours. It is not fair to the other employees if you are never there and they have to do your work plus their own. And if I was hired, I would keep Deborah as chief deputy because of her experience, and Colleen Bartholomew would be my confidential assistant. They are both excellent employees. They do the job with no problems. If they don't know, they ask, which is a good thing. So thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to speak, and if chosen as the new registrar, I will not let you down.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, I have one. Ms. Jenkins, Ms. Deborah Rowe mentioned restoring confidence in the registered voters. You think there's a need to restore confidence in the register of voters? You agree with that statement?
Yes, I do, considering.
Why?
Well, first off, the redistricting debacle that was going on. I know they lost a lot of faith in that. And then it's just the basic things that a lot of people think that we can rig machines. You can't rig machines. They're never hooked to the internet. And just letting them know, maybe having something like an open meeting, where open door policy, where they can come in and ask questions and we can show them the machines. Because they do, see, I still speak as we, because they do have a lot of questions about the machines. They think they're hooked to the internet. If we can have an open door policy, or maybe a couple times a year have something where they come in and we can show them machines and explain to them how they are used. Even with election day, they think those are connected to something, but they're not. So we just need to get that out to the public, let them know that there's no way that can happen. And also keeping up with the records too. A lot of people think, you hear always dead people vote, or they see somebody on the list. Well, they know that that person's deceased. Well, in the office, you cannot take somebody's word for it and take somebody off the rolls. You have to have proof, be that an obituary or an immediate family member coming in and with the paperwork. That's the way you take them off. You can't just say, oh, I know Joe Blow, they died yesterday, let's take them off. You can't do that. Just like you can't change a phone number without a signature. So that's the things we need to let the public know, that we just can't go in and change things whenever we feel like it.
Ms. McCarty?
Hi, Ms. Rhodes, thank you for coming. Is my mic on?
She's in the queue.
I'm not seeing that, so I don't know.
Huh?
I don't see it when they key in on your screen.
Let me request to speak again. Okay, I see.
Can y'all queue back in, Ms. McCarty? Queue back in?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Can everyone hear me? Good.
Yes.
I asked Ms. Rhodes a question about being an entrepreneur. And the reason I asked that question, I'll explain to everyone, is that an entrepreneur has to think out of the box to solve problems. I don't care whether or not you've ever really been an entrepreneur. I just want to know how you think. And so I did hear in your presentation that you had ideas for the office about the parish vehicle, keys. And I also see on your employment application, it looks like you have 16 years as registrar of voters. Is that correct?
14.
14? Okay. So what things did you implement while you were a registrar voter?
Well, I was never a registrar voter. I was chief deputy. I
Oh,
just
chief deputy,
had a
okay.
boss that wasn't there a lot, so I basically had to
For all
do both.
14 years?
2 hats. No,
Okay,
like the last year or so.
okay. Were you ever the registrar of voters?
I was for a couple of months, just kind of acting registrar,
Okay,
because the registrar had quit in August or September,
uh-huh.
and that's when we had the 2020 election with Trump, the huge one.
Yes. Okay. Did you apply to be the registrar of voters after?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What happened at that time? Please explain for me.
Well, I have no idea. I know they picked Sharon to be it. We had 9 people that applied, and we weren't allowed in here when the other ones spoke.
Uh-huh.
We were in the back, so we have no idea
Okay. so
everything else that
it-
was said.
You were employed there, and then you did apply to be the registrar of voters, and then Sharon was
Yes, ma'am.
nominated. Okay, got it. So let me go back to the questions of responsibility that I have, which regard handling money. Have you ever been an entrepreneur?
Well, I'm a crafter.
Okay,
I try to sell things, but it's more just for fun. That's about as much as my entrepreneurship that I would have.
okay, that shows a creative mind. Have you ever had responsibility with funds or developing a budget?
Well, I would assist the registrar with doing the budget every year because she wasn't very computer savvy, so I would help her out with that.
And so you're saying that you are?
Yes,
Okay,
I know the whole system that they have for purchasing and budgeting. I was actually I was the one that did all the purchase orders in the office.
I didn't ask Ms. Rhodes this, but what software are you familiar with? You must use Word. Do you use Excel? What do you need to
I have
use
in the
your
past,
office?
but we don't need Excel in the office.
Okay,
But actually, what we had was called Open Office,
Uh-huh.
and it has a spreadsheet program in it. So that I'm familiar with, which is basically like Excel, and not as buggy as Word, because you know how Word is when you want to do something that throws everything down and out of whack. Open Office didn't do that.
okay. I was not able to call references for you. I think it may have been my fault because I'm new and I had a stack of papers this big. I may have misplaced it. So if I were able to, who did you use as a reference?
Well, I didn't put references down because I didn't see where it asked for them, but it would have been Kathleen Kettner, which was the registrar when I was there,
Uh-huh.
and then Mary Burris.
Okay,
And then, I started under Dot London, just like Debbie did, and of course worked with Kim.
okay. So I didn't misplace the papers then?
No.
Okay, thank you. If a disgruntled person were to come in with a strong personality, and they wanted something immediately, How would you handle that situation?
We've had that a few times. You just have to remain calm, explain to them what you can and can't do. Because sometimes, like I said, everything done in that office is structured by a law. So you just, calmly explain to them what you can and can't do. And if you can do it, you can, you do what they ask. But if it's something that you can't do, then you have to explain that. And then if they start getting a little bit more and more ruckus, then you get the election code out and you show it to them, say, this is why I can't do it. But you remain calm at all times. We've had that a few times.
Okay. And have you had to think out of the box and solve problems that you did not have structure or previous experience with?
The most out of the box I had to get was voting the seniors at the Riverbend. Because sometimes they would bring the ones to you, which I love the seniors, they're so fun. And sometimes you would have to go and find them in their rooms. And when they're not that mobile, you kind of have to figure out ways to help them vote with, even if some of them can't hold a pen. So you put it in front of them and they tell you which one, and you let them see, and you mark the circles and all for them. But as of that, that's about the most out of the box. Because like I said, everything done in the office is structured.
Okay. Lastly, describe your character to me and personality traits to us. Right?
Kind, very, very, almost too much empathetic, kind, fun-loving, very good work ethic.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Deborah, for coming, and Michelle when you get up. First question is, you mentioned Ms. Rhodes as you will have her as your chief deputy. Right now, y'all going for the same position. Have you talked to her? Is she willing to stay on as your chief deputy if you are selected, or?
I haven't spoke to her about it, but I'm sure she would.
Okay.
We've never had issues.
Okay.
We always all got along really well in the office.
Okay. You mentioned 2020 election, big election, and you were acting registrar of voters. Did we have any problems in that election from registrar of voters or side of things? I know early voting is mostly registrar of voters. Did we have any issues?
Not a one. It ran flawlessly.
Okay. And my last one is, I see when you left, when Ms. Brandon took office, was that you personal decision, or was that Ms. Brandon asked you to leave? What exactly happened there?
No, that was a personal decision because basically when it happened, and I wasn't even second choice, I just felt very unappreciated, a little disrespected, and very undervalued. And basically it just tore up my heart a little bit because I gave so much to this office that it just broke me.
Okay. I understand. I was just kind of curious what exactly happened back then. So that's it. I yield.
Mr. Newsom?
Yes, Ms. Jenkins, thank you for applying. I know it's not comfortable. Also, Ms. Rhodes and Ms. Wilcox, thank you all for coming forward and applying. This is not an uncomfortable situation when you have to come up and talk in front of a bunch of people, and most of us are not real savvy at that. But again, thank you guys for doing that. Also, thank you for your 14 years of service that you've had, and we'll, if it gets elected, we'll keep going. Also, I'd like to thank you for your ideas with the vehicles and stuff. Those are innovative ideas. You answered one of my questions about the large election. That was the presidential election. And you brought up a good point about, Mr. Edwards brought up about confidence. Confidence, which appreciate Ms. Rhodes and Ms. Jenkins spoke on, needs to be restored in all levels of government. The public has no confidence in any government through Plaquemines Parish and no level. So with that, if you get selected, we'd work together in building confidence in the government and any of the candidates. So that's really all, just some comments I have, and I don't know if you'd like to comment on any of that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Champagne?
Ms. Jenkins, I'd ask you the same question I asked Ms. Rhodes. You already answered part of it, but again, I'd give you the opportunity to expand upon what changes or improvements would you make if you were selected to the position?
Well, like I said, the first thing would be the keys changed, because I never did like the idea that the janitor had keys to our office. And we'd come in the office in the morning, and she had it open, even though a couple times she was told not to. So that's going to be the first thing, is change the locks. Of course, the parish vehicle will stay there. Let's see, what else? I mean, there's so much. I really would like to do more public outreach. You know, just even if it's social media, have it, because so many people on social media today. And I feel that would probably be the broadest range, you know, to keep, I know they have a Facebook page already, but to keep that up and keep it going. Let's see. More training, definitely, to have in-house training on different things. Even if, I'd like to have, like, I know a couple of registrars that are close, and I know them pretty well. Maybe they can come down and show the office things that's not being done or not done correctly, because I'm sure there's a few things that we're missing, that is missing. See, sorry, still talk as if I'm there. And, I mean, that's basically about it. Like I said, everything is structured in the office. So you can only do what the laws tell you you can and can't do. A lot of people don't understand that.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Any other questions? Reverend Edwards? Can you cue in, Mr. Reverend? Request to speak?
The janitor and custodian, that's the same position there. And so you're saying you don't want the custodian to have keys to the office? Or you
No,
don't want-
honestly, she shouldn't. Because I spoke with other registrars when I was there, and the only people that had keys were the people that worked in the office. This is to keep the records safe, because she can go in there, like I said, the doors were open and she was nowhere to be found, so anybody could have walked in and got into any of the files at that point, except for the ones that were locked. But yeah, it was a big issue with me.
And how long that custodian been working for the Register of Voters office?
Well, she doesn't work for the registrar, but she's in the Port Suffolk Government Building. She does the whole building. Whew. Since I've been there. Well, since I was there. So I was there for, let's see, so I'd say about 14, 15 years she's been there.
And was there ever a problem in her 15 years of working at the Register of Voters where anybody say she looked at the files or did something inappropriate in her 14 years while you were there?
Not that I know of in our office, but there were things in other offices that we heard about.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Jenkins, for coming.
Thank you.
Item 2A3, Michelle Wilcox.
Is that on? Good morning, council members, and congratulations on the recent election. For those of you who don't know me, have never met me in person, I'm a lifelong resident of Plaquemines Parish. I've been married for 36 years to my husband, Will. We have 4 children and 5 grandchildren. All 4 of my children have graduated from Belchase High School, and my grandchildren at a school age attend the elementary school and the middle school. My interest outside of the work area is always helping other people. I have volunteered as a court-appointed special advocate for the court system here underneath Judge Clement. I was certified as a CASA volunteer. Actually, I would go out into the homes and evaluate children and families and bring that back to the court system and give them a report and my opinion to the judge. I've always had an interest in continuing my education outside of work. I've even taken classes at Delgado and been certified in private investigators. Was in private investigation, not to investigate people, but to learn more about the process and collecting information and researching on something that intrigued me greatly. Over the past 25 years, I've owned and operated 2 of my successful businesses, and they're both customer service-based businesses. I've also worked for 2 major companies in management and both in customer service as well. Most recently, I served as the Chief Deputy in Plaquemines Parish, having been appointed to that position in 2020. As Chief Deputy, I had the unique opportunity to not only learn the role of Chief Deputy, but also to learn the position of the registrar as well. I was fortunate enough to have worked through several elections and the redistricting process. Through those processes, I attended all of the training, all of the necessary and all of the required training of the state, through the state. I attended the seminars and the Elections Academy, as well as the redistricting training. Through that, I have built very strong relationships with the ROV offices all over the state. In fact, 2 of them were so gracious enough as to write me letters of recommendation for me for this position, and I hope that you've all had the opportunity to read those letters and to reach out to them. They have worked with me very closely over the last 2 years and very close with me during the redistricting process. Serving in that office, I took the initiative and every opportunity to learn the roles of not only the Chief Deputy, but the positions for which I would be responsible for if I were appointed to this position. I took the initiative to develop the first SOP for the office. There was no workflow weekly, daily, or monthly for that office, so immediately I started to write an SOP and have completed that. I have worked on the annual budget for the office for both years. I have prepared the payroll and annual evaluations, which are delivered to the Secretary of State's office in December. I have worked with our clerk of court on the jury veneer process and attended meetings for the Plaquemines Parish Board of Election Supervisors as a representative of the registrar's office. I've testified in court on behalf of the registrar's office for a challenge of candidacy in for a particular candidate in office. That was running for office. I prepared documents and participated in the recount election. I prepared documents and led the ROV through the audit for the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office. I've completed all mandatory training for the ROV office through the state, and I've attended all seminars at the ROV office during my time, including Elections Academy and again in redistricting training. Perhaps the most important thing that I took away from this office was to learn the Election Code Law, Title 18, and to make sure that our office was in compliance. It was not in compliance prior to us getting into the office for different things processes that we found that were used through the ERIN system. We found that some voters were being disenfranchised for outdated addresses and misinformation that came from jury veneers. I worked closely with Kim with that situation and the sheriff's office. We did come to a consensus and resolve those issues so that nobody would be disenfranchised. There was at least 500 or 600 subpoenas that had misinformation on them that needed to be corrected, and that was a very big charge of mine to make sure that everybody had were protected for their sacred right to vote, and that anybody was not disenfranchised for any technicality, so they wouldn't have to jump through hoops to go on election day. And I will tell you that most of the jury veneers that we had were in the minority districts, and it gave me a red flag. And so I did take the time to research that, saw guidance on that from people from the state, other registrars, and attorneys to find out what we could do to rectify the situation, and that is exactly what I did. If I would be elected to be the registrar, my office would be accessible and transparent to you and to your constituents anytime, 24/7. We tried to have more of a presence on the East Bank and down the road, as well as in Belle Chase, but being in Port Sulphur, I love being in Port Sulphur. We have a nice office. Debbie and I worked together for the last 2 years. We've never had any issues. We've gotten along really well. Even with Colleen, we thrived very much in that office, and I think we did a really good job with what we were given for redistricting. I know that some people were under the assumption that we drew the lines and it was our office. It was not. We were only implementing what we were given that was approved by the state. When we had issues, we reached out to Danny Garrett and to people from the state. In fact, Gavin Billiot, who trained everyone for redistricting, had worked very closely with him and the registrar from St. Charles Parish, Brian Champagne, and he also helped us every step of the way. But all we did was implement the plan. We had nothing to do with even naming the districts or the lines or any of the decision-making process. So if I would be elected, again, I would be accessible to you and to all your constituents. To improve the office, I would definitely implement the SOP so that we have a good workflow day, week, and monthly, as all of that has to come into account for your annual evaluation that we turn into the Secretary of State's office at the end of the year. So with that being said, my passion to help others and customer service is ultimately what government is. It's serving the public. And I would love the opportunity to continue to do that as Registrar of the Parish. And I thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox.
You're
Anybody
welcome.
have any questions? Ms. McCauley?
I'm going to go through my usual questions that I
Yes.
have with everyone. Okay. So I also called your witnesses, your references,
Uh-huh.
and they spoke well of you, just to let you know.
Thank you.
As did Ms. Rhodes's references. And what I need to hear from you is about entrepreneurship. I see that you have worked for yourself, is that correct?
Yes, I have owned and operated two successful businesses for over 25 years.
Okay, what type of responsibilities did you have doing that?
Promoting myself, contractual work, interviewing the customers that were coming to me for services in and out of state. I was in charge of my own budget. I was in charge of employees and staffing people underneath me. And I was successful for over 25 years.
How many employees or staff did you have?
I had 4 in one business, and then I have 15 in another. And then the 2 companies that I worked for, I managed and staffed 15 underneath my as assistant manager, and then as a CSS lead, I had 20.
And when you were an entrepreneur, were they 1099 employees? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
How would they describe you as a manager or a leader, do you think? How would people describe you?
I think that, well, I've been told, and we've done some training on that as well, and people have expressed to me that I am fun-loving, I'm very compassionate, I have a big heart, and I go out of my way to help anybody at any time, and that is true. I've been like that my entire life.
So the disgruntled question.
We've had many disgruntled people come into the registrar's office and calls as well. I'm very good at diffusing a situation, talking to them calmly, explaining them, going the extra mile, and showing them why we can or can't do something, but also too, if there's another issue that they have that is piggybacked on that, and we can help with that issue, I always went the extra mile to help with that issue, to calm down what was at hand until we could get that resolved.
Is there anything that you have or would implement in your office?
Yes, absolutely. First, an SOP. When we got in there, there was no structure whatsoever. There was no standard operating procedure. No one, in fact, I spoke to Kyle Ordwin myself and in person about this. He said there was never an SOP that was developed for the Registrar of Voters Office. So I took the time on a day-to-day basis and monthly to develop one that I think that would work very well in there, because it does need to be structured. While you're extremely busy during early voting and getting things ready for that, during the rest of the time, we need to be very vigilant and challenge ourselves to look at the records and to make sure that our records are concise and that they are correct and that no one is being disenfranchised for any reasons. And that if there is a discrepancy and a challenge, that we're not scared to take that challenge on and try and resolve it. And that is exactly what I did when I was in there.
I'm looking down at my sheet, and I have, under Deborah, I have 13 years' experience. I have Leanne, 14 years' experience. Was that correct? And for you, on your resume, it says 2 years' experience at the Register of Voters. So my question is, if you were Register of Voters, do you feel that you're fully trained at this point to handle the...
Absolutely. I worked in that office for 2 years and really ran the office for 16 months doing both jobs. I've learned it inside and out. I was asked to step in the absence of the registrar, to perform the duties that she asked me to perform, and I did that. Like I said, there was no set structure, so I leaned on fellow ROVs and going through seminars and trainings. We did develop strong relationships and asked for guidance on that, and I think that doing that and learning the dual role And working with the administration, the Secretary of State's office gave me the experience that I needed, power-packed. I never expected to have to do both roles. But I surely stepped up and I took the time and took the lead into finding my way through that and developing a system that would work.
Okay. I believe someone asked one of the other candidates if they would stay, probably asked Ms. Rhodes if she would stay in the position if someone else were elected as ROV. Would you do that?
Absolutely. Debbie and I have worked together for 2 years and never had any issues, as well as Colleen. We ring in that office very well together, all three of us. And there's no reason that they wouldn't stay at all. I would love them for us to work together again.
Or vice versa?
Or vice versa, absolutely.
Just wondered.
Yep,
I think that's it. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Schultz?
First of all, thank you again for applying, and I want to thank you. I called a couple times for clarification. I called Ms. Rhodes a couple times, and Kim in your office. Thank y'all for everything during the election, clarifications on different issues. So Ms. McCarty asked one of my questions, who would you have as chief deputy? And you're saying you would like Ms. Rhodes to stay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Debbie and Colleen.
And then I know you touched on it a little bit on SOP and everything, but what other, Ms. Jenkins mentioned outreach, more training, the car. What is your views on all those plans for her? Or if she was elected, what are your views on it?
Right. I do think that the car should stay in Port Self. I have no problem with that at all. It was something that we were told, actually, it's part of our package. We have to claim that on our taxes. So we were asked to sign a paper for the car. I didn't know what their procedure was before, and that was part of our salary. So if that has to be cut out, then that would have to be cut out. As far as the SOP, I do think that everybody needs to be on the same page, that everybody needs cross-training, and I would implement more public involvement, starting with the lower grades in high school, to not only just teach them about elections, about the whole political process. I think that will, at the younger the kids are, to learn about the structure of the government and actually the laws and rules and legislation, the more confidence we're going to build in people wanting to get back to vote and having a voice. I think right now, all around the country, that voter integrity is down, and it needs to be attended. And I also think that we also need to pay more attention to our seniors, 65 and over, and explain to them the processes and procedures that have changed. Our legislation for this office changes on a monthly basis. There are things that are brought before the Legislative Committee and in the user groups. I think that our office was not involved enough in that process, and I think it needs to be involved in that process. If there's something that we see in the office that needs to be brought before the legislator, we can be on those committees where we have a voice, and that needs to be done. We also need to be more involved in the user groups. The user groups are there for us to use. It involves a system of error in our computer system that we use to put in voter information for changes, any cancellations, any inactives. And I think that it's very important that we belong to those groups so that we can have a voice and we can ask questions. That's the time where we can implement good structure and have the opportunity to say what we need. And I'm going to tell you, I've sat in on those user groups, and anything that we've ever suggested, the Secretary of State's office and Aaron, they have taken care of that to make it more user-friendly for us, to get more data into specific areas that we need.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Newsom?
Yes, ma'am. Call you Miss Wilcox, and known each other a long time.
Yes.
Long time. So just a couple questions, real. Most of the folks have already answered everything. First of all, let me thank you for your time that so far that you've put in for government. It's pretty much a thankless job, as most of us will realize this. And thank you. I see you spoke about your family. Your family's in the audience. I'm very family well oriented. I want to thank your family for coming out and supporting y'all. So know your family real well. Couple questions. I see on here, and explain to me, Title 18. What is that?
That's the election code law for the state of Louisiana.
From the Secretary of State?
State's
Okay.
Yes.
And also, again, I want to commend you on your volunteer work, which is, spent a lot of time volunteering myself, but CASA, what exactly, I know that's an acronym, I'm not real good at acronyms.
It's
What is
a
it?
court-appointed special advocate that works with abused and neglected children and families.
And I see you have some time at that again. What else? No, that's all. Just a couple of those questions. Again, I know this is not a real comfortable situation coming up here and talking in front of people. And so just thank you for your time and putting in and all that. Again, thank you. Out to you, Chairman.
Reverend Edwards?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Wilcox. I know you real well. I was just confused when you was talking about Title 18. You say it wasn't nothing in compliance with us. Who was the us you was talking about?
Our office.
Okay.
We need to be in full compliance.
Okay. The other part, you were sort of part of some of the news about the Registrar of Voters Office, and Ms. Rose and Ms. Jenkins both talked about the confidence office. Based on your notoriety, all the stuff in the news about you and your registry, you think that you would have the staff support, if you were elected if we select you as a registered voter, to bring the confidence because you were so involved in all the controversy that took place in the Registered Voters Office?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that question. So I'm going to address it. And I've been waiting for this opportunity to do just that. I was relieved of my duties on September the 16th for reporting improprieties. The registrar wanted me to commit an unlawful act of sharing my password and email for the state that allows anyone to get into the state computer with that information, and I would not do that. That was it. She was not happy, and after I was threatened and I was asked to resign at that point, and I refused to do so because I had not done anything wrong. A few weeks later, I was called by the Louisiana Attorney General's office. They were looking into the redistricting issue with Mr. Mitch Jurisich and needed some questions answered and a timeline given as to how this happened. And during redistricting, I made a binder of everything that we used, maps, emails, any reference materials, anytime I spoke with Mr. Garrett and through emails. And I had this binder. It was probably about this thick. And all they wanted to do was to get that information so they could determine whether or not there was any wrongdoing in redistricting in this process with him for applying to run for this election. That was it. So when they called me, they assured me that they had talked to the former registrar the day before and let her know that they were going to speak to me. I answered all of their questions and provided them the information that they asked for. And within 30 minutes of that phone call, she came to the office and she relieved me, wrongfully terminated me from my position. That was it. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm not a social media person to dispute it. I am not going to lower myself to do that. Every single person in here mostly has my phone number and had the opportunity to reach out to me, to ask me. I've never gotten one phone call. I've never been afforded that at all. I've done nothing wrong. The state came to me when they first were investigating and asking questions. I had nothing to do with what went on with her personally. I was in the office working with Debbie and Colleen the entire time, and there was never a question about what we were doing from the state or anyone else, and the state knew exactly what was taking place in that office every minute of every day, and there is documentation of that.
I mean, I hear your explanation about the incident. I wasn't necessarily talking about the incident. My question still go back, based on the fact that you think that you can have the confidence of the staff.
Absolutely,
is what my question was.
Absolutely, I do.
My second question, after you was terminated, did you go through a process to appeal that process to get rehired?
Yes, I notified the Secretary of State's office underneath the Whistleblowers Act to HR. I also contacted the council to let them know, and the council actually contacted me as well. And I also took the first step in filing with the Louisiana Board of Ethics into my complaint as well.
So why when you rehired?
The process is not, as far as I know, and for what I know, the process is in the hands of the Board of Ethics. The only thing that they can do at this point is to reinstate and give back pay for when I was wrongfully terminated. I don't know when that will be in their hands to make that decision. I just know that it is a process, and I followed the process in doing that. I had an obligation to being asked to perform an unlawful act.
So you saying the Secretary of State have already given you a paper saying that?
No,
you're wrongfully
the Secretary of State does not do that.
terminated? Whoever the election people, does someone give you election?
No, no
letter saying
one,
that?
no one gives you any type of paper. The only paper that I ever received for being let go of my position was from the registrar, and there was no reason listed on that at all. And I do have copies of that if anybody wants it. There was no reasons listed, and there was no reasons given verbally.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Jurasich?
How we doing, Ms. Wilcox?
I'm fine, Mr. Jurasich. How are you?
Just one question.
Yes.
While you were in office, were you pleased with the outcome of everything that happened?
No, I was not.
Okay.
Mr. Champagne?
Ms. Wilcox, thank you for being here, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask you the same question I asked the other two applicants. You've already mentioned you would implement an SOP that you put together, your workflow plan that you put together, and implement more accessibility. But would you like to expand upon some things that you would do to the office to improve upon?
Yes, besides SOP, I would like to have an office open on the East Bank and down the road at least once a week, rotating with 3 people in the office. We're afforded to have a satellite office. We don't need a full office. We don't need a state line per se in those offices every single time we're there. But we do need to be there for the public, and I would like to implement very much so. Also, to have an open door policy, which I think we've had. Anyone that is called or come into the office, we do anything and everything that we can to help them. I did while I was there, and I don't see that any problem in doing that. I would like to bring in, excuse me, I would like to bring in more of the school-age children into the office, and I say children, young adults into the office, so they can actually see the process and see what goes on behind closed doors, so that way that can restore and educate them all at the same time and restore voter confidence in the parish.
Mr. Schultz?
So you mentioned the binder. Where is this binder now?
On September the 10th, Sharon Brandon came to my house and requested I brought home the binder on that Friday. The 10th, she picked it up for me, and I have not seen the binder since then. It was supposed to be supplied to the Louisiana Attorney General's office. When they called me on Wednesday, which was the September 14th in that afternoon, I told them that I had the entire binder. I'd given it to the registrar. They let me know that they had not received a timeline and asked me to provide one to them, and that's exactly what I did.
Okay. So the status is right now with the ethics board. You're saying that you have not heard back from the ethics board?
Yeah, they would not contact me about anything or any kind of decision. My complaint was being wrongfully terminated, and all of the evidence that I prepared for them and gave to them. I don't know how the process goes, if they'll contact me. I'm sure that when they do an investigation, that they will contact me, but I have not heard anything. I don't think they go into session until February, from what I understand.
And then,
And I think you saw the binder, Chris, because I brought it home the day
I
that,
saw- I mean, I didn't look through it.
I know you
I
didn't
saw
look through it,
you
but you
had
saw
it.
how big it was.
Yeah.
Okay. And I kept
'Cause I
everything.
had questions on my district.
Absolutely.
And wanted clarification.
Correct. And I did bring it home for you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw, I didn't look through it, but I saw it.
Right.
How big it was. The password, not saying that it makes it right no matter who it was asked to be given to, but she asked for
Ms.
your
Brandon
password
asked
for
for-
her or to be given to somebody outside the office?
She asked for it for herself in a text message with the other employees for me to give it to all of them, of which
Okay.
you cannot do.
I just want some
Yes,
clarification.
absolutely.
Mr. Newsom?
Yes, one more question. Through the, and I'm going to say this correctly because I was corrected on this, registrar of voters, are y'all part of the civil service system or y'all
Unclassified.
unclassified?
That's
So,
correct.
okay, thank you.
Ms. McCarty?
I wanted to ask a question about the password again. So you were asked to give a password or access to a computer system to everyone?
Yes, in the office and the registrar.
Did anyone else have access to that?
No, you have your own personal password and email and password when you work for the Secretary of State, and you don't give it to anybody. Through your cybersecurity, what we sign at the beginning, and the policies of the Secretary of State's office, you never give that to anybody. That's a fireable offense.
I see.
So when I was asked and demanded day after day, straight for 4 days, I contacted HR and told them that I refused to do that. They put it in writing that that was not the policy and I would be violating the law. And told me not to do that, and I had followed that already, but just for backup and clarification, I did reach out to them.
Do you know the purpose of that? If other people had their own password, why would they ask for yours?
I have no idea. I can only assume, but assumptions doesn't get you anywhere. I have no idea.
Okay. But other people did have their own passwords?
That is correct.
Okay. I did have another question, but I forgot. But I thank you for coming. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Reverend Edwards?
Yeah, I want to try and understand, you talked about standard operating procedure. Is it standard operating procedure that a deputy registrar, and I don't know the binder that Mr. Schultz told me, but you said you took the binder out of the office and brought it to your house? Is that
Right,
part of standard operating procedure?
No, this was for the binder for the redistricting. This is all the tools that we use for redistricting is what the binder was for, was just to keep all of the maps, all of the correspondence with the Secretary of State's office and with Mr. Garrett and the council all together in one place to show that if anybody had any discrepancies with what went on with redistricting, that they could come in and see what we used. I was asked to bring it home by the registrar to bring it to her.
Oh, so it wasn't by your house, because I thought
No, she asked me to bring it home and she picked it up from my house.
you brought it home because the registrar asked you. And
Correct.
you happened to need to see it. So
Correct. He was actually outside of my street campaigning, and we had talked about the maps. I said, well, I have the binder, I can show you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Schultz?
Okay, you clarified that. Yeah, I did not ask for the binder.
I'm sorry.
I was on the
No.
street over and I called because I heard about something about my district and I called her and she's like, I have the binder if you want to stop by. And I was like, yeah, let me look at it where I can get clarification on where my district ended.
No, he did. And the only reason I refer to it as the binders, that's the only way that I could keep everything together that way, in case we had any questions, that anybody could look at it any time. I just happened to have it because she asked me to bring it home, so.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ms. Rose, Ms. Jenkins, and Ms. Wilcox for y'all wanting a job. We're going to go into executive session now. Let the record show we're going into executive session at 10:06. Huh? Going to have a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Reverend Edwards, second by Mrs. Schultz. Machines are open. Mr. LaFrance, you want a verbal yes? Executive session. Yes. Let the record show 8-0 to go into executive session at 10:06 a.m. I'd like to call the meeting back to order at 10:42 a.m. with no binding action. Next item, please.
Agenda item 4, resolutions wherein suspension is being sought. 4A, a resolution appointing blank as the registrar of voters for the parish of Plaquemines and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Councilmember Kotnovich.
I'll offer for suspension only. Can I get a second? Second by Reverend Edwards. Any questions? This is on the suspension only. Machines open. It passes 8-0.
A resolution appointing blank as the registrar of voters for the parish of Plaquemines and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Councilmember Kotnovich.
Do I have an offer?
Off of Ms. Deborah Rhodes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by, offered by Ms. Jurasich, second by Reverend Edwards. Any questions from the audience? Council, Ms. McCarty?
I think this was a very difficult decision. I like to look at the personalities of the people. And while I think one candidate had a personality that would handle any type of situation that came along and act in an entrepreneurial spirit, I see the experience of another, and I hope that the other candidates will consider sticking with the office and put that strength of character and personality into making that office a better place. That's it.
Any other questions? Machines are open. And it passes 8-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Newsom, second. Something with this?
Yeah, we just feel that before we join, I just need to know from Ms. Rose wanted to make a statement, that's all.
Ms. Rose? Can you come up to the mic?
I just want to thank you so much. This job means the world to me. I love it. And I know it was a hard decision for y'all, and I will make you proud. And like I say, and you have anything, I am open to suggestions because I want everyone to get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion to adjourn by Mr. Newsom, second by Mr. Schultz. Machines are open. It passes 8-0. Let the record show we adjourned at 10:46 a.m.